I'm Deb Engle, and I am the author of Be the Light That You Are, and I'm so happy to be here today with Wilson Schaef. She is one of my favorite authors and has been for a long time. She's a person that I've admired really for years because of her books, because of who she is, because of everything that she teaches. And today we're going to be talking about one of the principles from Be the Light That You Are that's about loving detachment. Letting go from all of those entanglements and unhealthy attachments that can keep us stuck and keep our lives complicated. I wanted to talk with Ann about this today because she's had a long career working in addiction and codependency, helping us understand our relationships and how to do them better with ourselves and with other people. So Ann, it's so good to be here with you today. Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here.
Great. You've been writing and teaching for many years. And for anyone who's not familiar with your work, I want to just introduce you, tell everyone a little bit about what you've done. So you are an internationally known author, speaker, consultant, and seminar leader. And you've been described as one of the most important thinkers of our time, cutting edge, way ahead of your time. You've also been described as having the vision of the eagle, which is something I'd love to hear more about. You have been the author of 16, which is mind-blowing, internationally best-selling books, including When Society Becomes an Addict, Women's Reality, Native Wisdom for White Minds, Beyond Therapy, Beyond Science, and Living in Process. And one of my personal favorites, Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much, which has been on my bookshelf for years and years. In Be the Light That You Are, I do talk about this idea of loving detachment. And I know that in your life, you've done some detaching at different times. I think one of the most recent ones that's been significant for you is kind of stepping away from your career as a writer and as a teacher for a while. You had great success, sold millions of books, and then decided it just didn't quite feel right and that you needed to detach and step away for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and what it was in you where you knew that it was time to take a break and detach?
I probably wouldn't use the word detach. I know it's one of your favorite words, but I probably wouldn't use that. But I had a lot of help with that process of making that decision. One of the things that happened was I was having dinner with a friend at the Sofitel Hotel in Minnesota, in Edina. I think it's in Edina. It was a nice, quiet evening, and we were chatting quietly. I have to say, I can't even remember who it was now, but I don't think that's too important. I think it was another woman. We were just sitting there talking and just quietly being ourselves. Someone on the other side of the room screamed, "Oh my God, there's Wilson Schaef." And she ran over and asked if she could have my autograph. Everybody in the room started looking at me and craning their heads and getting up and looking at me. I hated it. I just hated it. And then shortly thereafter, I gave a speech down at a small college in southern Colorado, and I'd agreed to do it. It was a small venue, but I always tried to pay attention to small venues. I think they're as important as big ones. And I just had time to go in there, do that speech, catch the next plane out, and get somewhere else. And so they'd arranged that I could do that. They had people waiting with the car running and very dramatic. And it was the kind of situation where there's no back entrance to the stage. You have to walk through the aisle of the seats to, the aisles on the sides to get up to the stage. So when I finished speaking, and I think it was a women's college, but there were a lot of young women there, and we had a good time together. It was a good situation. And so then I came down to run for my plane, and people were reaching out and touching my clothes, pulling on my clothes, actually. And And I remember having the thought, oh my goodness, this is what Jesus must have experienced. He must have hated it. And so I started really looking at the whole role of celebrity and realizing that I didn't feel very comfortable with that. At the very same time and space, I acquired a stalker who was dangerous and was creating some havoc in my life. When I spoke one time in Sydney, Australia, the group felt that they needed to hire a bodyguard for me. And he was lovely. I mean, I loved having a bodyguard. I like to interact with the crowd, and he was almost invisible, big man, but almost invisible. But whenever I looked around, he was right there. You know, it was really, and he even said to me at the end of the speech that he really liked it and that he'd been a bodyguard for Princess Di, and he felt the two of us were the honor of his life. He was lovely. But having to have a bodyguard was, again, very disconcerting for me. Realized this stalker. So there were several things in my process, which is the way I would put it, in my process that said to me, you need to take a look at these things. And so I decided that I would take time off from being in the public eye, and that I would take as long as I needed to do that. And I had no idea what it was I needed to do other than that. As it turned out, I spent a lot of time with Native people around the world and just sat and listened to Native elders, which was absolutely wonderful. Probably some of the greatest moments of my life. I liked not having to be on airplanes so much. I spent a lot of time exploring my own Native roots. I'm Cherokee on both sides. And at the time I was born, it was not only not popular to be Indian, it was a negative thing, but more importantly, children, I was right on that cusp when they were stopping sending children to boarding schools to basically colonize them and colonize their minds through education and religion and things. But my family, unbeknownst to me, and I don't even know that they did this with consciously among themselves. We never talked about it because I didn't find out that they'd done this till after they were dead. But my family had all had an agreement that I would not know that I was a Native person and that I would be raised as a white kid so that I would get all the advantages of that, especially the educational advantages they wanted me to have. Because I was bright. Clearly I was bright. And they raised me in a way of every moment of my life was a teaching moment. When my dad was working on the car, he would say, come here, Elizabeth Ann. And Elizabeth Ann is my real name, Elizabeth Ann. And he'd say, come here, Elizabeth Ann, and see how this works. And when my grandpa was working in the store, he'd say, now, Elizabeth Ann is helping me today. And I got to see the way that it was, during the Depression. And I got to see the way that he dealt with people. Almost everybody had no money. And the women would come in and they would buy 5 cents worth of coffee. And he had these big bins of things that he would scoop things out of. And they would buy, 2 eggs, just the minimum that they could get. And he always had a lolly for the kids, always had. And I said, why do you do that, Grandpa? And he said, they don't get treats anywhere else, Elizabeth Ann. We give them treats here. And then he would write down in his little book, on their spine was their name. And then he would write down what they bought and how much the total was each one. And then he would give them a copy and he would copy in his book. And then they would give him whatever money they had, which was never enough for whatever they needed. And he would subtract that and write down the balance. And then they would apologize. They always would apologize that they didn't have the money. And he would say, no, that's okay. We want to make sure these kids have what they need. And I know that when you get some money, I know you'll pay me. And I remember one time asking him about that, and he said, they'll pay me when they can. And if they can't, we've done a good thing. That's how I was raised. And so I give a great, and then my grandmother, my great-grandmother on my mother's side was, it was a word I never used till fairly recently. I suddenly said, oh my God, she was a medicine woman. And I'd never been thinking in those terms, but she doctored people. And so she took me with her gathering and digging and showed me the proper way to be respectful of the plants as they gave themselves for other people's healing and health, and how to dig and leaving a blessing there for them. And then she always, with her clients, asked if they minded if I sat in, because she said, Elizabeth Ann needs to learn these things. And so I can't remember anybody ever saying they didn't want me to sit in on their sessions with her. And so that's what I was surrounded with as a child. And I constantly was being taught. And, much of that, I remember this week saying to someone, I know every day I check to see what they're doing in Washington, D.C. today. And I said, well, my granddad said, with a cow, they can't kick you if you stand close to them. But a horse, it can kick you anywhere, no matter where you stand. So you have to be friends with the horse and make that clear. But with a cow, they just can't kick you if it stands close. So be sure always to stand next to the cow. And if you meet people or have to deal with things that are like a cow, you make sure you stand close to them so they can't kick you. And so I feel like I need to know what's going on in Washington every day so I don't get kicked by the cow, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So all of that I grew up with, and it was just a constant. And I still, everything I do, I feel like I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm working on a book now about cancer and the addictive society and the relationship between the two. And I think there's a very definite relationship between the two. Right. So, yeah, I remember I go down to MD Anderson for my treatments in Houston. And, it's like somebody recently wrote a paper. If you want to get rid of your racism, go to MD Anderson, because every race in the world is there, every color, and it's just been wonderful for me to be surrounded by this group of people, patients and staff that are rainbow colors from all over the world. And almost all the medical staff are of some other color than I am. And so the whole thing has just been a positive experience in terms of, I wouldn't have had this experience if I didn't get cancer. I don't know that, like somebody said, well, you're fighting cancer. And I said, oh, no, I'm not fighting cancer. I'm doing cancer right now. And I hope not to be doing it for too long. But right now, I'm doing cancer and I'm living with it. And it's living with me. And we're both learning things, I hope. So maybe it won't want to live with me too long. Who knows? But so it's a little bit of a different way of looking at things than making a conscious decision to detach. But anyway, so I took, I think, almost 20 years off. When I came back, most all my editors had either died or retired. And So it's been a bit, it's interesting to keep on writing books and get them published. I've just fired a really bad editor. But so that's my story on that.
Great. There's so much in that story that I wish we had a couple of hours that we could go back and revisit. That one of the themes that really stands out to me is your lifelong curiosity, that interest in always learning something new and looking, I think, for the gifts in it as well. You might state that differently or in the same way, but what you said about cancer, for instance, that it's living with you, you're doing cancer, and that it has things to teach you. Mm-hmm. That seems like such an inspiring and instructive way to live life. So is there anything that, as I think about the people who are watching this, just hearing your story hopefully will prompt people to be more curious in their own lives. But is there anything that you've discovered that maybe can help people stay curious, keep learning, approach their life from that standpoint of what can I learn from this?
I feel that it's really basic to understand that everything is a process. That I think one of the things we do in Western culture is we try to static the universe. And I'm using static here as a verb and not an adverb. We try to be in control and we try to get things organized, get what we know, get what we think we know, and we then concretize it. And everything is a process. We're a process. Our lives are a process. Our cars are a process. We're never going to get our cars or our houses just the way we want them, and they're going to stay that way forever. It's just not going to happen. And so one of the things I've done, and I think that we've done, I think mostly because of the scientific basis that we've built this culture out of, is that we've tried to make our world static, which gives us an illusion of control. I think it's very key to remember that everything is a process, that the chair that we're sitting on is going to wear out. It's going to wear out. I would like it if it didn't, but right now I'm going through heaps and heaps of clothes. I had a house in Ireland. I had a house in New Zealand. I had a house in Hawaii that I'm selling, Montana. As I'm slimming down for my life, I've got all these clothes that I bought. And I've had such interesting learnings from this process. Some of them aren't even recognizable to me, but I have these stacks and stacks of clothes. And so I've been going through them. And what I really want to keep and wear, and what I'm going to basically either donate to Goodwill or donate to our international network, the Living in Process Network. And people will buy them, put the money in our kitty so that it helps support the network. So that's been an amazing process. And one of the things I've discovered is that the ones that I'm most fond of are the ones that I've worn a lot. I have a lot of things that I haven't even worn that I have. It's very happy for me to give those away. But the ones that I've worn and really love, like I found a Peterman. You don't know whether you remember that. It was kind of unusual at the time, but you ordered clothes through M. Peterman Company way back 30 years ago. And they were some of the most unique clothes I have. And I ran across a couple of sweaters that I've had for probably at least 30 or 40 years. Now, I am not going to throw those sweaters away. I'll throw some of the new ones away or give them away, but not some of those because they have memories in them. They have memories in them. One of the things that my mother said to me way, way back was, remember, Elizabeth Ann, the most important is the unseen. And when you talk about spirits and spirit guides, I have my spirit guides too. It's a good thing I have writing spirit guides. Otherwise, I would never, ever have written a book because I grew up especially in college, my freshman composition teacher did everything to convince me that I was a non-writer. And I believed him. And so when I wrote my first book, it was like taking a huge bowel movement and then thinking I'd never have to take another one, because I couldn't imagine myself writing it. And I think I've actually written more than 16 books now, haven't I? Huh?
Yeah, it's up to 17.
I'm asking people, 17, 18. I've got 2 more coming out. One just came out, and I'm working on 3 others right now. So for a non-writer, mother's saying to me, it's the unseen that's the most important. And what I know is I have writing spooks. I have spirits that help me. And as soon as I focus on a book, they start feeding me information. And I found it's best for me to sleep alone and not with my husband, because when I wake up in the morning, I'm full of ideas. Or sometimes they wake me up at night and I have to get up and write down ideas. For example, I do a calendar, a yearly calendar, a page-a-day calendar for women who do too much. And I've been doing it for forever. And I love doing it. I love the process of doing it. I keep thinking this year they may not renew it, but they did. And the day that they renewed it, she called to say they were renewing the calendar once more. That night, my spirit guides were whispering things that I could say, sayings that I'm always coming up with these sayings. And they were whispering me. I was having to get up and write something down. Then I go back to sleep. Then I get up and write something down. And sometimes when I read my own books, I think, wow, who wrote that? That's said really well. And I don't think I do that. I think I have and need lots and lots of help. And so my job is to open myself to that help. And I have one book that we really had trouble with the publisher getting a clean copy out. It's called Becoming a Hollow Bone. Frank Foolscrow was one of the most important teachers in my life. He was a Lakota spiritual leader. I once actually said about him and then said to him that I thought he was the most spiritual person that I'd ever met. And he did healings. Like if he were alive now, I wouldn't worry about this cancer at all, because I've seen him heal people that was impossible. And he said to me when I talked to him, he said, oh no. He said, I don't do those healings. He said, my job is to be a hollow bone. And the healing comes through me from the Creator. And all I have to do is get out of the way. And that's what I feel with pretty much everything I do. The minute my ego gets involved, the minute I attach to something, even a concept, I do something with that. Even if I think too much about something, that's why I skimmed your letter, but I didn't think too much about it. Even if I think too much, my thinking gets in the way of my knowing. And so I think I believe in this culture, we're taught to think too much. And thinking, especially in Western culture, thinking has become concretized concepts, which are not real. For me, it's important to remember that. One of my friends who was a Native American, he taught at a seminary and was a professor, and he was also a Native American, and I said, very, very spiritual person. And we were doing a class together, a group process class, and he said, when we concretize our perceptions, we are participating in theological idolatry. And I just went, wow, that's one of the most profound things I've ever heard in my life. And I just, that was like emblazoned on me. And I just think that, when we think we've got it, that's when we're in trouble. That's when we're in trouble, because we're always getting it. But I don't think we've ever got it. You know what I mean? I will refute something that seemed to me to be a real truth or move beyond it in the next book I write. So I don't feel like I'm attached to my own ideas as concrete, because to me, everything is a process. And my job is to participate in the process as fully as I can. And then everything else will happen. And then Pete's wiggling around a lot. Is the time running out? Am I talking too much? Okay.
You're good.
Pete's my memory bank. And one of the things I do is I'm not really great on details. I don't care about details. So if it's someone's name or even a concept, I'll have to say, what was that, Pete? Because that's his job. He remembers, especially since the chemo. It's the essence of things that I'm really engaged with. The essence. That's so important to me.
Beautiful.
So
if you've got time, there's one more question that I'd like to ask, but I understand if you need to go too.
Go ahead.
The question is about having the vision of the eagle. I mentioned that earlier, and I think it's actually part of your Lakota name, if I understand. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to have the vision of the eagle and the fact that that is who you are?
Yeah. When I went to visit Fool's Crow, I went to visit him for my son. I was worried about my son. And a friend of mine who was Fool's Crow was his teacher, and he said, Fool's Crow is the only person I know who can help with this. I went. I tried to get my son to go, and he said, I'm busy being a 14-year-old kid. If you think I have a problem, you go, and you and this Indian man take care of it. So I went. And the first thing he said to me was, what took you so long? Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I was expecting you earlier. That has been said to me by Native people all over the world. What took you so long? And I said, but I'm here now. And he said, yes. And he said, I've been expecting you. And then he had a ceremony prepared for me already. And he had tied 2,222 tobacco bundles on a string. And he had the 4 directions set out. And he reached up in the air as far as I could tell in just the air and pulled down a couple of bows, the like symbolic bows and arrows. They were made out of wood, but they weren't real ones. They were symbolic bows and arrows. And we started the ceremony. And I was kind of blown away because I was going to have him work on my son or do something. And then he told me, he said, your name is Wian Wamblishka Wakan. And he said, Wian is woman. And he said, it's very important that you're a woman because only a woman can do what you're here to do and what you need to do. And so you must always remember that you're a woman and you're proud of that. And I already had been active in the feminist movement. And so those were good. And then Wamblishka is white eagle. And he said the eagle flies higher than any other being and sees the broader picture and can see what others can't see and put it together. And that's your job. And Wakan is sacred, holy. He says, never forget that you're doing the Creator's work. And it's sacred. As long as you remember that, you'll do what you need to do. I couldn't remember it for years. I'd have to keep asking, what was that again? And then I began to see, as I step back and look at cultures and see, like, I could have told you the exact problems that we were going to have with Donald Trump 1 week after he was elected or when he was on. And to me, he's adult child of an alcoholic who is on a dry drunk. And it's just so clear. Dry drunks are always mean. They're always angry, partially because they're not drinking and they don't have the relief of the alcohol. And he's an adult child of an alcoholic who always has that need to be heard, that need to be seen. We're very, very needy people. And I've just seen it, like with the culture. One of the things I think I said, in a healthy society, we won't have politics. I believe that's where we have to go. So somehow with Fool's Crow's constant support, I feel like he's constantly with me all the time. I'll tell you a secret. Of course, it won't be secret if you share it, but when we have turbulence on the plane, which I hate, I always take it as that he wants to talk to me. And so I start talking to him. And the first time this happened, I was editing a book. And it was really funny because they didn't serve the drinks, they just served the food. And then the stewardess sat down and I asked one of the stewards what this about. She said, we have really bad turbulence up ahead. And so the captain wanted us to get the food out and then stay, buckled in. This is years and years ago. And so I just started praying. And I said, look, spooks, if you want me to get this book edited so it gets back to publisher and gets out, this is the time I have to do it. Now, if you give me turbulence, you know I can do it. So if you really want me to do this, I expect a smooth ride. I need that. Not a bump. Not a bump. And so when we were landing, the pilot came on and he said, folks, I don't understand this. He said, the plane in front of us reported terrible turbulence. The one behind us reported the same thing. And we haven't had a bump. And he said, I don't understand it. And I sat there smiling seraphically and saying to myself, I understand it. So whenever we have turbulence, I just get on, I say, okay, what do you need to teach me now? What do I need? What am I doing? What do I need? I need your help, And we talk. And almost always the pilots will come on and say, I don't know what happened to the turbulence. Even one time we sat on the airport, I remember in Frankfurt, everyone was grounded. The turbulence was so bad, and they let a few planes take off. He said, it's awful. It's going to be terrible. Pete and I both prayed and talked to Fool's Grove. Not a bump. Not a bump. I believe I get all the help I need when I need it to do what needs to be done. And when I finish my job here, I'll go. None of us lives forever. Fool's Crow did tell me I would live to be 98, so I sort of think they're wrong about this cancer killing me. I don't know that it will, but I think I might make it to 98. But we'll see. Maybe I'll get everything done and I won't have to live till 98. Who knows? But I found always that the unseen is much more important than the seen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've shared, including the secret, which I loved that. It's just such a lesson in what's possible for everyone when we open up, as you said, to spirit, to this communication, to curiosity and learning and possibility. You really are, you're the embodiment of that.
Can be measured. See, this is what our science teacher teaches us. Measure, then you can predict, then you can control. Holding on to that scientific worldview is killing us.
Well, I'd love at some point, when the new book comes out, absolutely. Yeah, to talk more about that connection between cancer and addiction. I think that's a topic that will be so important to society and so many people who are listening. So I'll let you go for today, but thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been a real
voice made it.
It absolutely did.
I'm glad my voice made it. Thank you for being so patient with me.
Oh, it's been a joy, honestly. And I invite everyone to go to your website, AnnWilsonSchaef.com. We'll put that just going up here so that everyone can see Also invite people to come to my website, debraengle.com, for more interviews, more information, and just some wonderful offerings from people like you. So again, Ann, thank you so much. You too. You take care.
Thank you.
Okay. And thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.